Well, hello there, gamers, film fans, TV heads, and everybody else in between, and welcome to the first episode of this new podcast, From Pixels to Celluloid, a podcast about video game adaptations. I am one of your hosts today, Kurt, aka Hypersonic55. I also have another podcast, Film Focus, but you can check that out if you wish. But we have another gentleman here who I have wanted to talk to about this topic for many moons now in an official capacity. So, sir, would you like to introduce yourself?
All right. Hi, I'm Vincent Trinita. I'm a writer, reviewer for onemore.game.ph. It's a Filipino-based video game publication. And I usually review from AAA to indies. I like to review indies. I'm really passionate about story and how different mediums can, tell their own different types of stories. And that's what my focus is on a lot of my reviews. So yeah, been working with Kurt for quite a bit on a more unofficial scale. I've been a guest. I've been featured as a guest in one of his podcasts. So yeah, check that out. Yeah, back to you, Kurt.
Thank you. And yeah, Vincent had such a nice introduction. Mine was just so blasé. I guess I'll just like enhance mine just a tiny bit, just to say that yeah, I am a freelance illustrator. I used to have a blog, but I kind of left it in the wayside now. But if you want to check out the archive of writings that I put out there, it's on WordPress.com. So it's hypersonic55.wordpress.com, where I used to do a whole load of like film reviews and like the odd occasional topic. But primarily right now, my online presence is mostly in my other podcast, Film Focus, where I talk about films and films. So it'll be reviews or like certain topics of conversation, but I will admit things are slowed down a little bit. But yeah, check that out at your own leisure. But today, over here, as you can tell from the number of this episode, this is number one in a new journey that I hope I'll be able to take you guys on, talking about video game adaptations, because it's a topic of conversation that I am absurdly passionate about. I love video games, I like films. Marry those two together, and you have a recipe for something that can either be good, bad, or somewhere in between. And we've had a number of adaptations over the years, but I feel like in the current year, which is 2023, we have way more adaptations that we can talk about than before on a variety of different scales. And the quality seems to be increasing to a degree, but by how much? I guess that's the topic of conversation that we'll be having between me and Vincent. And, hopefully you guys will get to chime in later on and share your thoughts. But before we get into all that, I just want to talk to you guys about us as individuals and, just to get to know what kind of gamers slash film fans or TV fans that we are. So, Vincent, if you just like to start off with that, if you don't mind.
All right. Well, as I made my introduction earlier, like I got my with video games, like you do get your start from your original Super Mario Brothers, whatever your parents had. Had a Famicom for the longest time when I was a kid, and then because of the movie The Wizard, I don't know if you remember that, the one with the Wonder Years kid, and then Mario 3 was shown as like the final game that they played, and I'm like, oh, like kind of want some of that. So yeah, like then I got it on the family computer, and then I started playing it, and I was going, wow, Super Mario 3 is amazing. It's like leagues different than Super Mario 1. So yeah, like I got my Super Nintendo, played Super Mario World, and then for a while, it started to get stagnated. Like, the platformers and the beat 'em ups don't give you the same yeah, and the licensed games aren't that great either. So when I started getting into Final Fantasy 3 at the time, which is 6 in Japan. Let's not get into the numbers here. I got into role play games like for a while. RPGs, I've called them RPGs until someone differentiated them between RPGs and Japanese RPGs. Different topic altogether. I'm not going to get into it too much. I have my own feelings about that. Yeah, as I went through in life, MMORPGs, games just changed. And then now that the pandemic kicked in, I got back into games again, and because of Final Fantasy VII Remake, I started like I started getting back into the JRPG scene, and it has changed. It has really changed. And a friend of mine offered me to review games, and then for me, like during the pandemic, and then for me, I was going, yeah, like I wanted to. I just didn't want to sit around my butt like just like playing games. So like reviewing them gave me a bit of an excuse to do that and make something out of it. So now, yeah, the last game that I played is Star Wars Fallen Order. Not Star Wars Jedi Survivor. You can check out my review for it. It just dropped. I'm sorry for the PC gamers for all the all the bugs and defects about that. Like console gamers aren't as badly affected, but I had to restart my playthrough because of all these game like gating bugs. It's nuts. But at the same time, it's a great game. It's just yeah, EA, like you're doing a good job in the conceptual front, but yeah, fix your games, man. Fix your games. But on the topic of adaptation, Jedi Survivor, Respawn Entertainment. Shout out to my buddy Brian and Respawn. So yeah, if you're listening to this, great game, guys. Yeah, they truly got it. They truly got how to adapt a Star Wars story that captures the spirit of the original game and original IP, and then bringing it to video games, using that as a medium to tell a really great story about the Jedi, the rebellion from a different perspective rather than from what we're seeing in Disney Plus and whatnot. And you juxtapose that with Andor. One thing that I could see is like they're telling their own story, and then Andor pretty much it feels like two parallel storylines in the same timeline, and it's amazing how both mediums are in place, a video game story and like a TV series that like segues into the big battle, which is the original trilogy.
Yeah. Oh, that was so well put, sir. Like, well done. Now I have to follow that up. But for me, I grew up in the 90s, so my first console was the Sega Mega Drive, or Sega Genesis for all you guys over in the States. My first game was Sonic the Hedgehog, and then I became obsessed with him alongside a bunch of other games like Championship Edition of Street Fighter 2, Mortal Kombat 2, Streets of Rage. And while I never owned a Super Nintendo myself, I had a few friends who did. So that's how I got to play stuff like Mario Kart, Super Mario World, Killer Instinct, and stuff like that. Once I got a Game Boy, once Pokemon became a thing, I practically begged my parents to get me anything Pokemon based. So I became one of those crazy nutcases for a little while. Eventually got my N64, then my GameCube, and I was mostly a Nintendo guy for a while. I did get a PS2 once my uncle gave me his, and for a while that was mostly just a Dragon Ball Z machine, so I could play the Budokai and Tenkaichi games. Played a bit of the Kingdom Hearts ones on top of that. And then, going through, was it 6th and 7th gen of gaming, got my Wii, then eventually my PS3, PS4, Wii U, and now I'm currently on my Switch. Current games I'm playing at the moment, at least in terms of the newest game I have, is Fire Emblem Engage. I think that game has a really fun combat system, but it does lack some of the character material that made Three Houses and Awakening more entertaining games. And I guess the current game I'm messing around with right now is I've gone back to Breath of the Wild because obviously with Tears of the Kingdom on the horizon, I'm stupidly looking forward to the amount of creativity that's in there with the new fuse-based abilities and just creating stupid contraptions that may or may not actually work. And yeah, man, just Nintendo, they have a lot of issues outside of the games that they make, but
Lawyers,
when they
something in my throat. Little legal I meant like yeah. Go sorry.
Yeah. But when they make good games, it's hard not to just be like, you guys are crazy wizards. And, Breath of the Wild, I'm not expecting them to recreate that magic again, but if they have the right foundation, which they do, to like, just expand upon the world and like, change things, upgrade and like, shift things around. I'm sure it's going to be a super fun experience. So yeah, man, I'm very much a Nintendo gamer, but at the same time, I do have a healthy allegiance to Sony as well. But I'm not one of the sort of like was it guys that just swears by one company who makes games and stuff. I'm open to all. It's just that I cannot afford to have all. So yeah, I just pick and choose where I can have my fun.
So are you a Sony pony or an Xbot?
I guess it would be the former because like I've never owned any Xbox based material. And the only time I've ever played Xbox is when I'm hanging around with my friends. So, I don't really have nearly as much of an attachment to their IPs. Although I have had fun, like, messing around with multiplayer of Halo, Gears of War, and Fable way back when. But man, it's so weird that Fable feels like it's in the rear view mirror of my mind now, even though there's supposedly a new one coming out, but they haven't released anything from that
Well, I
game
just
yet.
hope it's a complete game this time around.
Oh God, yeah. Good Lord.
It's Fable, like it really starts off a great game, like the first acts, and then you really don't know how to end it. So they just like, and the end. And they lived happily ever after. And then you're like, there's still, 5 hours of the game that should have been there. I don't know.
Yeah, that was a whole deal and a half. I mean, I wasn't like playing it myself, but when Fable 3 came out and people finished that game, I remember on YouTube the amount of videos that came out about it was pretty funny, especially Angry Joe's video on that. That was pretty fun.
Fable
Yeah,
2 was the one that ground my gears. Like I played Fable 1 a bit, but then Fable 2, like I was so into. And then
yeah.
by the time you got to like the final act, that was it. Like you destroy this catapult, and then they tell you the rest of the story, and you go back and you go, oh, by the way, you can you know you can buy a better house, I guess. I don't know. Yeah.
Oh, that's the dream, right? Like,
Mhm.
better house. Woo.
Yeah.
Like,
Ooh. At least the third one they added a dog, and you want your dog to live again, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, but they also added like farting in people's faces and stuff, which is just like, why? I mean, I guess I can't really like talk about like I can't complain about juvenile humor in gaming too much. I mean, like Saints Row, like, just made a whole big thing about that in like 3 and 4.
Well, yeah, Saints Row 3 was I think that's like the cream of the crop out of all the Saints Rows, like that's what to aim for. 4 kind of went out of hand. They just went off the rails. Like 3 had like the balance really done right. But then again, you know how sequels are either like bigger, better, stronger, faster.
Yeah, fair. That's fair. I mean, I guess those games are still better than like that weird reboot they released. Ugh.
Yeah, the thing with that reboot, like I played it, like I didn't mind it. It felt really generic, but at the same like that's what I hate about reviewing games that are um like it's there like everything is there. Like I played it on a console, so sorry again for PC gamers who had to put up with a really bad port. I didn't like we didn't really have such a big issue with the bugs in the PS5 version, but it did give a really like it feels solid, feels complete, but it's really generic. It went back to like the first, like it just felt like another GTA clone with
Yeah.
millennials in the gig economy. And like the humor's not really for everybody. It's a little bit off-putting at one point. Like I didn't mind it, yeah, but like I don't know, like maybe at the time that time, August, I guess, I also had like a lot of things to review, so I just kind of like pushed it out the door. But yeah, like I wish I would have played it better. The same thing with like Dead Island 2. Like I gave it a wait, like I maybe it's like, but at the same time, like I could see that it's like it appealed to me. Like some of the humor there kind of appealed to me, but I guess it's that quippy Marvel-esque type of humor that a lot of people are getting tired of. So
Yeah. I mean, everybody has like a different threshold for like things that may entertain or annoy. And I think that game just I think it had like, something that I wanted to try and do, but I think its execution left a lot to be desired. That and like the the glitches I saw in that game are just like this game lacks so much polish, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah, PC. Like I don't know what's going on with a lot of developers. Like they just can't get PC right for the last since August, really. Like I think that Saints Row was the start of the whole really shitty PC ports. I don't know what happened with PC. Suddenly like even Sony can't get it right.
Yeah.
Like the Last of Us Part 1. And I was going, oh, what's going on there? And then, you have the Outer Worlds that release this whole new batch and then it's just broken everywhere. Yeah, like I like my PS5. I really do. Like it's the one that has the least issues for some reason.
Yeah.
Well, Xbox is like you have the Series X that just keeps lagging everything behind. Again, a different topic altogether.
Yeah, I mean, like to be fair, we could be talking about like, is it game releases and like performance for a while, but we are straying a little bit from the main topic of conversation at hand. So let's shift a little bit towards the main topic, which is in 2023, what is the status of video game adaptations? Are they getting better? I feel like there's a very simple answer for this, which is yes, but at the same time, I think that it requires a little bit more nuance than that. So I want to present this to not only you, Vincent, but everybody else. But obviously, since they're not going to be talking, I'll allow you to start. How do you feel about video game adaptations at this current point in time, and do you believe that they are getting better?
One thing that a point of reference that I want to talk about is the comic book adaptations. Because for a while it wasn't, we would get a few, we'd get Spawn, for example, and then okay, cool. And then we'd get then Blade came out in 98, 99, something like that.
It's 98, yeah.
98, yeah. And I was like, whoa, this is pretty good. And then Spider-Man came out, and then X-Men came out. Oh, X-Men came out, and Spider-Man came out. Um, with video game adaptations, we've all seen the art house classic that is Super Mario Brothers.
Oh God, no.
Yeah, and then I don't know if you've seen that Double Dragon one. I
Oh
think
yes,
I think
I
I
have.
was 13, 4, 12. Yeah, in my teens, and like I didn't mind it too much. Um, I thought Street Fighter was a hoot, and Mortal Kombat was pretty fun. Yeah, the 90s, right?
Yeah.
And then it just kind of, went on the wayside. And then I don't know if you remembered when like the Spirits Within came out, Final Fantasy in 2000.
Yeah.
What's his name? Sakaguchi at the time was talking such a big game. They're gonna move away from gaming and then, present it to the world. And then like personally I didn't mind it. Like it didn't feel Final Fantasy, to be honest with you. It felt like if it didn't have that Final Fantasy stamp on it, it felt like it had all the things that Square, the storytelling purposes of Square. And I thought it was like an okay movie. However, you've stamped the Final Fantasy in it, and everybody expected Final Fantasy 7, which they came out, with Advent Children about 4 years later. And then yeah, you had Silent Hill, which I thought at the time was like really well done. Critics didn't. It just felt like a generic horror movie. But then from someone who plays games, and it was like, oh, they got the atmosphere right.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Yeah, I wasn't too keen with the whole Resident Evil series, but as proven time and time again, it's unadaptable. You take from it what you want, like for me, like sure, maybe not. Then Netflix like was a game changer with Castlevania. Um and then yeah. Should we talk about Prince of Persia? No, let's not talk about Prince of Persia. And yeah, like and then Sonic was really like I would say when Sonic came out, I think that was like the X-Men when it came out in 1999. Like say what you will about the Sonic adaptation, but I really felt that it was it really did its darndest to bring in the characters and merge it with our world. And then I guess Super Mario's probably the Spider-Man at the time, right? Which would make Detective Pikachu the Blade. Don't want to think about it. Don't want to think about that. Yeah, and then there's The Last of Us, which was like a really good choice for HBO to do. So, it gave that prestige type films, kind of like when A History of Violence came out um, back in 2003, I think. The Road to Perdition, those graphic novels, right, that are not in the same superhero realm, but in the same comic book university realm.
Yeah.
So right now, I would say we are at 2002, 2003, in terms of the timeline for video game adaptations, if we would follow the comic book timeline. So I am optimistic, but I'm also, I'm not saying it's gonna go the same trend, but at the same time, I'm optimistic. As Kurt has said, like I'm optimistic where it's gonna go. But who knows? Maybe they'll adapt a B tier video game, like the same way where they adapted like B tier superheroes, and then now we have the MCU universe as we know it, right? Like, well, I don't know what's gonna happen. Like, I don't know what's gonna happen next. But right now, I think we're in a good spot where it can go either way. Like that's what I would say. Like it can go either way. I'm not an expert. Like I just go with what I see and what I know, and I see patterns. So yeah, I'm older than I look. So so from what I saw back in the early 2000s, the early 2020s, I would say like we're at the infancy of video game adaptations breaking out.
Oh man, that was so wonderfully put. See, this is why I have you on the podcast, man, to elegantly say things that I would probably fumble the ball with at least a few times over. But yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with you, especially with the choice of time period for where video game adaptations are at the moment. Because yeah, video game adaptations are such a weird thing, especially when you look at it from their inception. From the time that they were started in the 90s, a lot of the adaptations that were made, when you're looking at Super Mario, Double Dragon, and Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat, those were not games known for having plot-based material. Most of that stuff you were finding in the manuals, or at least in the case of Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat, you had arcade modes which would have like maybe some minor story details at the end, but there wasn't like an overarching plot for it. So the filmmakers at the time were basically just having to fill in the details themselves. And it was very interesting that, at least with those adaptations, sometimes with the animated work as well, that's where some of the foundations for the world building, character details, and like certain elements that would later actually become canon in like some of these later video games down the line, which was pretty interesting. The first set of video game films, I can't really give them too much crap because, again, they were based on material that didn't really have story to work from. And at that point, video games were only just starting to flirt with the idea of having story as part of the game. It wasn't until we got into like, your sort of PlayStation N64 era where they actually were able to start, utilizing technology that would allow them to tell stories with voice acting, with cutscenes, and things would start to feel a little bit more cinematic. And slowly but surely, between PS2 to PS3 era, that's when we actually started to get like full on stories that felt comparable to stuff that we was watching in film and TV. And as the technology advanced, so did the performances, so did the ability to recreate some of these, I guess, for lack of better terms, cinematic feels and put them into video games. So with the adaptations within the 2000s, obviously you had your Resident Evils, your Dooms, your Silent Hills, and then you have like the number of Uwe Boll movies that were just scattered all over the place. And I've seen at least 3 of them, which haunted me for the rest of my life. Do not, I repeat, do not watch House of the Dead. Do not watch Alone in the Dark. Do not watch Blood Rain. It is time that you will not get back. It hurts.
I would like to make a recommendation though. The Dungeon Siege movie was fun. Like I don't know about you. Like everybody was getting different directions, so everybody was acting in their own personal movie. It's fantastic, you know. But Jason Statham just brings Jason Statham, and then you have everybody else, all the other extras, like doing their own little Renaissance fair thing. And then in the background, you have Ray Liotta going, I'm in a video game movie. I'm Ray Liotta. It's the best. I don't know. Like, give that a watch, Kurt. Like that, I highly recommend it.
You know what? That was one of the ones that was on the list because at one point Amazon Prime had all of like, is it?
Ooh,
I think, yeah, he had all of his films on there, and I made it through up until Blood Rain, and I was like, no, 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 I'm done, I'm done. um, but yeah,
I'm
now that
telling
you,
you, it's bad. Have a few drinks, but like it's not that level of bad. Like I would say, yeah, like I think the actors brought their own thing to it. Like I would say it's a team effort to salvage it as best as they could.
God, oh, I'll keep that in mind. um,
It's a good watch party, like
I'll see if I can assemble a crew for that one at some point.
yeah.
But yeah, like literally throughout the 2000s, I feel like that was the experimental period for like certain adaptations because certain films weren't able to, capture the entirety of the video game because it was either not within the budget or like I guess directors and scriptwriters weren't able to capture that film element. But there were glimpses and pieces that they were able to like incorporate into the film to sort of make you go, okay, it has pieces of the puzzle, but not the entire thing. Like the Paul W.S. Anderson like Resident Evil films. I think the first film is probably the best of it because it's probably the most restrained. And even though it doesn't have that many things that are like the video game, it has just a few elements and tonal elements that I'm like, okay, I can see something there. Silent Hill, while there were certain changes in that film that just were completely bizarre to me, that film had the tone, the atmosphere, and even the original composer in there to like, utilize that film score. And I'm like, this film is so close. It's right there, but it's not quite there. I know people tend to crap on the Doom movie, especially for like that first person thing, but having seen that for the first time a few years ago, I was unfazed. Some people were crapping on it like it was the worst thing ever. And I was like, are you guys watching the same thing that I am? But maybe I'm just a little bit more forgiving. But
But like
yeah,
yeah, it was also like that. I call it the Carl Urban's get his ass kicked era. Like every single movie that he was in, he's like the Sean the Sean Bean of getting his ass kicked hard in every movie.
that's a good shout, to be fair, because like what he was in Lord of the Rings, he was in Born Supremacy. He didn't do too well in Riddick either, and that film that was all within a very short space of each other. Like what, maybe 2 or 3 years?
Yeah,
God, good lord.
yeah, he's like
um,
typecast as the guy to get his ass kicked the way what's his face? What's the name of your boy in Sonic? Um,
what, Jim Carrey,
no,
or are
no,
you
no,
talking
no,
about like oh no 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 no
the Cyclops
God,
guy.
yeah, James Marsden.
Yeah, James Marsden like had his typecast as the dude that's just always getting left by women, like by their girlfriend for someone else. Yeah.
God, yeah, poor guy, man. He deserves so much more.
Hey,
Um,
he got a son in Sonic and
I mean, yeah, like I guess things worked out for him. Like hanging around some alien kids and shit. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think there was a shift to me in the sort of mid to late 2010s when you had adaptations like Warcraft and Assassin's Creed. While these films are not what I'd call good, it was the filmmakers behind them that started to make me think, okay, these guys are actually attempting to try now. Because, with Duncan Jones, when he came into Warcraft, he talked about he was a big fan of the source material and the way he was talking about how he was taking certain elements from certain parts of the Warcraft lore and then forming it into like a genesis point to jump off from to then go on to like other Warcraft related like material in the future. I was like, oh crap, okay. And the dude who made Assassin's Creed was the same guy who made Macbeth, I believe.
Hmm.
Um and having seen that film prior to watching Assassin's Creed, I was pretty hyped to see what he would do with it. but I think both films sort of suffered from having ambition, but just not the right kind of execution. For me, Warcraft had a lot of really interesting elements, but the CG was a bit wonky. There was too much going on, and that film didn't take enough time just to sit and establish certain things. Whereas Assassin's Creed to me was just painfully dull. I've never seen something so dull in my life to the point where it put me to sleep, and I was just like, this is not a good sign. And you had like, Michael K. Williams, Brendan Gleeson, in addition to Marion Cotillard and like Michael Fassbender, and they didn't even make use of these guys in a good way at all. I was like, shameful.
Maybe you were still in Macbeth mode, like Macbeth, this Ubisoft project, I guess.
but
Yeah.
but yeah, then we had like just this weird, interesting like tilt upwards with Detective Pikachu, which while it wasn't like the adaptation that I think a lot of Pokemon fans were hoping for, it was like an interesting step into seeing a Nintendo property in live action
Yeah.
and realizing Pokemon in the real world. And then obviously Sonic came out. And
Hmm.
now with Sonic, the problem with like Sonic as opposed to Mario is that Mario's never hanged around in the real world in his games, whereas Sonic has. There's been at least like, 2 decades now of Sonic hanging around in the real world,
Yeah, you
whether you're
even
talking
even
about.
fell in love with a human girl, right? Like it's amazing.
Yeah, yeah, that was a thing. I mean, most of us Sonic fans have just accepted that's a thing now. And like, we can dunk on it and meme on it a little bit, although there are certain people that are kind of for that thing, but God, I'm not gonna talk about that. But yeah, with the adventure games, Sonic 06 and then Unleashed as well, Sonic has hanging around with the humans for a little bit. So I
Yeah.
understand that a lot of people who played like just the classic games are just curious as to why Sonic would be hanging around with these guys as opposed to just these anthropomorphic friends that hang around in the video games and the comics.
Yeah,
But
the
I
cartoon
feel
comics, yeah.
but I feel like the first film at least was a decent like jumping off point just to, it uses that whole trope of like, is it human hang around with CG, like, was it humanoid like animal and then they get into hijinks. But I thought it was a nice solid basis. And
Hmm.
then the second film, I think, besides being a little bloated and having a little bit too much going on with the human characters, I feel like just in terms of being like just more connected to the video games with
Yeah.
like the amount of like visual and like is it character based stuff at that point in time, it was probably the best thing that happened to Sonic since Sonic Mania, which was like
Yeah.
crazy. So clearly they were heading in the right direction. And then obviously with Arcane and
Arcane, yeah.
Castlevania,
Yeah.
I think people really started to see the advantages of long-term storytelling over TV as opposed to just being limited to film.
Yeah.
And also being in the medium of animation, you do not have the restrictions that you have with live action as well.
Yep.
And while I can't speak for Arcane in terms of its adaptation material, because I know it was mostly original, but they obviously borrowed certain characters and elements of the world. When it comes to Castlevania, at least from what I've seen for the first 2 seasons, the way they were able to create basically a prequel to the original storyline of Castlevania 3, and then basically have the story of Castlevania 3 play out during season 2, to the point where they were even able to include the original music from the games in there. I'm like, this is so nice. I was having the best time ever. And you could tell that the people behind this obviously wanted to create something original, but adhere to the video game material.
Of course.
And it also helps that, like, was it Warren Ellis that worked on that? I
Mhm.
believe.
Warren Ellis, yeah. It's
So
it's
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
It's nuts how like I rarely give props to Netflix, but this is one of those rare times where you have three different like genres of animation. You have Castlevania that has the classic cell 2D animation type,
yeah,
and then you have Arcane that has the new style rotoscoping, this painted animation style that you see in like Scanner Darkly and whatnot. And then Cyberpunk Edge Runners with the Trigger Studio Trigger anime style. Three different separate styles, and each told a story that's befitting to the world, befitting like even choosing that style that they told it into really told the story of the world. Like I'm not a League of Legends player, nor do I want to, nor do I plan to. But it really provided this like compelling story. Uh, League fans might disagree with certain like ways they've adapted certain characters, but then for all the uninitiated, it's a window to the League world, and it's a compelling character art like story to where each characters are going. So for me, like, yeah, like I would say like as much as I did enjoy arcade. I did enjoy an arcade like a lot more than I thought I would. Episodes 3 to 7 like really took it home for me. And then like you have the typical Netflix way of, okay, let's it dies down and sets up the next season type of thing that I can't stand with Netflix. Yeah, and then Castlevania had some growing pains, especially the later seasons, but I feel it ended well and it started really strong. Edge Runners though, like that's my favorite out of the three. It's a one-off. It told like a really good story of the cyberpunk universe, both the 2022 RPG module and the 2077 video game, right? And it told a really personal story about what it takes for how to be human, like really embodying that cyberpunk theme of what is human and how much of your empathy you can keep when you just get so obsessed in chasing your dream and being something strong, stronger than what you are, because society we live in a society society
You
just
had to
doesn't
say it,
allow
right?
you to. Yeah, I have to say it. We live in a society. Oh yeah, but like props to Netflix for providing that that medium to allow for these video game adaptations to thrive, which led to The Last of Us, the Last of Us adaptation in HBO.
Yeah, and again, there's like such an interesting variety of video game adaptations that are out there right now. HBO's like Last of Us is pretty much as near perfect as you can get. I never played the game, but I watched the walkthrough on YouTube because obviously that game is so cinematic. You can pretty much just watch a let's play, and it's pretty much just like a very long movie, around like 9 hours long. And the adaptation was obviously it made some interesting changes, but they felt right for TV.
Hmm.
And it was just like it was so interesting because like the game literally just laid out the format. It was right there. All you basically had to do is just like take it and make it work for TV, and that's what they did. And there was a lot of interesting and smart changes that were made. Some that were just like different, but different in a way that just made sense because like there were certain times where I'm like, this was skipped over or abbreviated, but it made sense for the pacing of a TV show. And just that first episode, especially, just seeing the way certain scenes are remixed, or you had like certain things that just enhanced the world or like enhanced like the state of the world. So when you got into certain scenarios or certain things kicked off, you're like, ah, okay. And I'm just like, yeah, props to like, the show for executing it so well. And like obviously having like Neil Druckmann so integral to the process of making it.
Hmm.
But at the same time, I'm just like, I kind of want to see something that doesn't have as much of a foundation laid down.
Yeah.
Because I feel like the adaptations that I'm more interested in are the ones where you have a story, but it's maybe a little looser, or there isn't as much connective tissue that, you can get from point A to point C, but there's not so much of a B to connect it together. So I kind of want to see people like find something that's a little bit more risky or a little bit more tricky to adapt.
Of course.
Um, which is why like certain adaptations like Metal Gear Solid or like Street Fighter or technically Mortal Kombat, even though that technically exists sort of now,
Hmm.
there's more interesting things in there for me because you see certain moments either in like the animated world or in certain video games where they've tried to create more story, and you're just like, there's potential here. If you could just narrow the focus down, it could work. Like Netflix released that Tekken like OVA series like last year, I think. And that was an interesting short anime where they focused on like I think it was Jin Kazama.
Mhm.
And he was the main central character with like a handful of people surrounding him. And while I thought that overall that show wasn't quite for me, I feel like it had like enough of the foundations where I'm like, okay, this is a good jumping off point for any other fighting based story where you could just have one or two main characters and then have everybody else sort of float around them. But I guess it just depends because like everyone has their own vision of what these things could be.
Mhm.
And it's so easy to just make something that's still okay or kind of pants because for as many good adaptations there are out there, there's still a lot of crap.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
Netflix, they did some good stuff, but they also gave us that Resident Evil TV show
Oh
with
yeah, that's yeah, that's what I was trying to ignore.
I only saw the
Yeah.
first episode, but that was enough for me. And
Yeah. Rest in peace, Lance Reddick.
yeah, Lance Reddick, I love you to death, but that weird blade related hairdo they gave you to make you Wesker was the most amazing and terrible thing I've ever seen in my life. Like, criminy.
Uh,
I don't understand. Like, after we had, the Paul W.S. Anderson movie, I'm like, okay, it can't get any worse than that. And then Welcome to Raccoon City
oh
came
yeah.
out. And honestly, that might be either like it's in the top three for me of the worst adaptations I've ever seen. Sure, it has like certain like visual elements from the games, and they clearly took inspiration from like the first 2 to 3 video games.
Yeah.
But the problem is they tried to condense like a story of 3 games into one, remix certain characters to the point where only like maybe 2 of them resemble the games. The rest of them are just like really bad, like cosplay dummies. And I
Yeah.
don't know what the hell they did with Leon. Leon looks like Carlos, but he acts like a kid that doesn't know how to like do his job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing with like Resident Evil. It's why it's difficult to adapt is just the way the game progressed as from its progeny, like how it started, right? It was survival horror was still at its infancy. Nobody really knew what to do. Like they had like Alone in the Dark. Then you had Resident Evil, which was like semi like they have some RPG elements. They have some action elements, puzzle elements, and then item management, which so you have this un categorized game. It's still unclassified at the time. Nobody really knew what, like they were making things on the spot. It's an
Yeah.
action game, of course. But then like back then in the early days of the PlayStations, uh game genres were really specific. It's an action game, like it's a platformer game, it's an RPG, like you when you get a game with a genre, you know what you're getting. Then you get something like Resident Evil, which has all the like the B movie acting, right? That gave it its sort of charm, and it has its jump scares, and it has like all the all the lore, all the backstory material, and like the items that you get that in its own way delivers its own like scare like own scares, like the and like your imagination starts moving. But what you see is this like cheesy cheesy like acting. You just see like Jill and Barry like just going there back and forth, and it's so bad. But at the same time, like that's the thing though with interactive media, the player puts themselves in the story. They're also writing the story the way they're watching it, like the things that the lore that you find, the stuff that's missing, the players put in their own like thing in the story to make it complete. That's what completes the game experience, that the input of the player. So then you have Resident Evil 2, you have Resident Evil 3, then it went to the the GameCube, PlayStation 2 era PlayStations, and now the hyper realistic first person ones in Resident Evil Village and Resident Evil 7, which in my opinion, like, it's its own genre now. Like they go through their own phases, whereas Resident Evil 1 to 3 have that cheesy survival horror thing that they're still trying to find their way to. So why I'm saying, like earlier I made a joke about being unadaptable, uh is because like how can you insert that interactive experience that players experienced when they were, going through the growing pains of Resident Evil, in such a way that like I have to give Paul W.S. Anderson props for doing what he did, because it's kind of nuts in its own way, where the games itself, they are kind of crazy in their own way, like you have this virus going around turning people into superhumans but everybody else into zombies. You have that whole action based thing. Like he kind of got the spirit of it but adapted it in the Paul W.S. Anderson way that some people might like and some people didn't like, including myself. But that's the thing, like how do you add the player experience into the game without it um being totally invasive to the whole product, which is in a way like, yeah, like that's where like The Last of Us has an edge over everybody else, because it's primarily a narrative game that Neil Druckmann was involved in and was inserting his own directorial thing, plus the minds behind HBO, which I really felt this adaptation felt closer to The Last of Us 2, which I find like a lot of it's a really contentious topic, like it's divisive.
Yeah.
But if you like but like in terms of it, like I saw The Last of Us, the adaptation HBO adapted as the part two, which is what Neil Druckmann really wanted to do. And you can see it, like it's leaning towards that um adaptation, whereas the first one was more of, they're still coming off fresh from Uncharted 3, and they're going about it, with the whole Uncharted 3 paradigm, with this what's that, post-apocalyptic universe. Whereas The Last of Us 2, he knows what story he wants to make, he meaning Neil Druckmann, and that's from going on, that's basically the template that we're following, like it or not.
Yeah, again, wonderfully put, sir. Yeah, we're just in this very interesting period now where the amount of video games that could be adapted is like ridiculous, because we've spent at least the past decade or so in an era where like video game stories have been at the forefront of the process when these games are being developed. So it's not just about the gameplay, it's about that sort of connective tissue between the two while being an interactive experience. And there are definitely developers who have been able to pull that off more so than others. But it's getting to the point now where even video games that have shown up in the last like 5 or so years are like starting to get like talk of adaptations. Like Horizon has only just gotten its second game, but now there's talk about there being an adaptation of that in like some form. We've got like Borderlands on the horizon. I was talking off air with Vincent, but we actually have like a potential new adaptation of Street Fighter on the horizon from Lionsgate, I believe. And the 90s one, like Vincent said, is like, it's a fun little silly movie if you don't take it too seriously. And like Raul Julia's like M. Bison will live in our hearts for the rest of eternity. But that 2009 film was not good. That film is one of the most what the shag am I watching kind of experiences. There is a dance scene in there between Chanley and like this woman, and it's super awkward and creepy. uh, just the looks on their faces with them trying to be seductive to each other, and it's just like, what am I watching? And M. Bison is like, was there, I think it's Neil McDonough, but he's an Irish businessman. And I'm like, what is, and his whole thing is about like what, trying to get his pregnant wife, like transfer his spirit into his pregnant wife's belly, and he cuts the belly open. Oh.
This is the Kristen Crook one, right?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Jesus.
I wish I never saw that film, but I was like, ah, the we can only go up from there. I pray to God.
Yeah.
But yeah, just
But even like
isn't
the anime adaptations themselves weren't perfect either. Like the original Street Fighter movie adaptation, that was great. The like I really loved that one. Then there's the Street Fighter V's, then the Street Fighter Alphas, and I'm not too keen with a lot of them. And you had that like mini Akuma story, like it's kind of weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember that one. I was going like, that is so weird.
Yeah, it's been a
Um,
while since I watched those, but it's funny. I have both of the Alpha movies. Like, at the time, it was just because they were available to me, so I ended up watching those a few too many times. But I'm just like, all this talk of the Dark Ado and like Akuma and like bloody Ken and Ryu's story and like it's man. I remember looking back on it and I'm just like, yeah, a lot of this just is not nearly as compelling as that like 90s like Street Fighter 2 animated movie. That film still looks incredible.
yeah.
But yeah, just right now I'm very curious because we're in this weird point in time where adaptations are clearly getting better and you're having like a lot of interesting places where you can find them. Again, if it's not on streaming or on TV, you can find it in like the film form in the cinema now with like actual positive reception coming out of it, especially with the new Mario movie, which I will say I understand why everybody is in love with it. As a representation of the game, it is pretty much as pitch perfect as you want. It looks, it sounds, very importantly, it sounds like the video game. They got the bloody original composer to work with Brian Tyler to create this incredible sound. Presentation wise, that film is A1, 11 out of 10. But at the same time, it has the same issue that a lot of Illumination films have, where it's just sort of devoid of substance. It's very light on story and light on character, and certain moments where they do have like just tiny moments where you think certain things are going to develop and happen. The film moves faster than the Sonic movie, which is insane. At 90 minutes, this film just snaps and snaps and snaps and just keeps moving. And I'm like, oh crap, we're not actually going to stop and breathe. Okay, fair enough. But yeah, it's I know a lot of people have said or like level complaints against haters in quotation marks saying it's a Mario movie. Why are you
Mhm.
expecting story? Why are you expecting substance? Well, I'm just like, and it's like, oh yeah, it's just for kids. I'm like, but that shouldn't be an excuse. I'm tired of this label that people keep throwing out that children's films have to be devoid of substance in order for it to be like, is it acceptable? No.
Mhm.
Some of my favorite films from Disney, Pixar, and DreamWorks, at least DreamWorks when they're doing, good jobs with their material. They can have stories that like, have memorable characters, memorable plots, to teach a life lessons, or like they can make you feel. And I'm not asking films to change my life every time or have like this deeper meaning that I'm going to be thinking about for the rest of my life. I'm just asking for a little substance. That's all.
Yeah.
Just a little time to breathe and tell your story and be more. You
Mhm.
don't have to just be like the basic bare minimum.
That's basically the reason why I skipped the Mario movie, not because, like yeah, like I'm looking for something with a little bit more substance, this more advanced stage in my life. Not that, like not that I might watch it on streaming. Like I'm not really close-minded to watching it. It's just like I'm not rushing off to the movies, to the theaters to see it. But
Yeah.
yeah, the same way I skipped Avatar Way of the Water. It's that's the other reason why I skipped it. This the substance part is not there. Like, yeah, of course, 3D technology will always change, visuals will always get better. But if the story isn't gonna draw me in, yeah, I've seen the old Avatar. Like, I don't know if I want to watch Navi School and Navi whatever. Same thing with Mario. Like, it's great, like my girlfriend Anya Taylor-Joy is there, but but it's still, like I don't know, I do like my movies like you with a bit of substance.
Yeah, I mean, and here's the thing, like I'm sure we'll still be going through these sort of adaptation growing pains for a while because again, there are like numerous adaptations on the horizon right now. Um I've mentioned a couple of them, but there's still ones that are like that have been talked about for years. that still we're not sure exactly where they are in the stages of development, but like, I'll list off a few of them right now. As previously mentioned, there's the Metal Gear Solid one, there's Gears of War, there's apparently a Rainbow Six film in development as well. Again, they're trying Street Fighter. There's a Mortal Kombat sequel that's supposedly starting to film in June. You got the Borderlands movie that I think is wrap production at the moment.
That's the one with what's his face, short guy.
Well, Kevin
Kevin
Hart.
Hart, yeah,
Yeah,
short guy.
yeah. Because as soon as he says that, I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I know who you're on about.
So bad. I'm short myself, so
But
I
yeah,
think I
no,
can crack that joke.
it's interesting because, like, obviously those are all film, but there's still, like, the format of television, which I think people are starting to see the advantages of utilizing now. Because again, animation has so much more, like, versatility than I think people realize, and only through certain recent material like Spider-Verse and Arcane, and even like Cyberpunk and Castlevania, they're starting to see that, like, it's not just like one visual style you can choose. You can utilize so many, and because it's TV, you have more time, and especially via a streaming service, you're not limited to the standard duration of like old school TV. Anything could be any type of length. It's just a case of having the right creative team behind it to tell stories with, good dialogue and compelling stories, but also having a cast and a visual style that will be compelling as well.
And not
And
removing some people's helmets.
yeah. We can't go into that right now.
No, we can't. But the one thing for sure is, like, you kept the helmet on Carl Urban and Judge Dredd. Look how well it turned out.
It was a smart move. They made it work. But then,
They
like,
made it work. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, like you
yeah,
had Alex Garland, like, is it working with
yeah.
Carl Urban on that one? So
But yeah,
but
Paramount
yeah,
Plus subscribers deserve better.
yes, they
I'm gonna stop.
Master Cheeks, man, Master Cheeks. That when that was online, I'm like, because I stopped watching after the first episode, so I was thinking, okay, this Halo show isn't really for me, but I'll wait to see what happens. But there was loads of people just tweeting about it online and talking about it on YouTube, and I saw that picture, and I'm just like, what the hell is going on? And the fact that, like, Master Chief slept with, like, that woman who's supposedly like the main antagonist, I'm like, what are you doing? What are you? So yeah.
Yeah,
Sometimes I feel pain, and I'm just like, there's a reason why I just choose to step away from the internet and life, and I just crawl back into my bed and just, just hide for a little while. So it's the safest bet.
yeah. Or just, really pick and choose what you're gonna watch. Which,
Yeah.
as for reviewers, we don't really got a lot of choice in that. Like, I've this year I think I've reviewed 16 games, and a good 5 of them I want my time back.
That's a statement.
I seriously want. I'm not gonna mention which games, but yeah, I'm just like, oh no. Like, oh, this is gonna be one of those.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I guess that's the one, like, worry I guess you have with especially TV based adaptations, because obviously that requires more of your time, and
Mhm.
depending on how they decide to spread out the duration of that, it could be, something compelling, but it also could be something that, causes you a great deal of pain and suffering. And I thankfully haven't gone through too much of that, but again, like, that first episode of, like, the Netflix Resident Evil, I was just like, what the hell am I watching? This is just bad. Besides, besides, like, my boy Lance Reddick, like, coming in to have like a really fun moment during like a conversation with the principal, everything else was just like, I feel like I'm watching like some really painful CW based material right now, and I'm like, this,
Yeah.
what is
Even
this?
then, that Superman CW show wasn't too bad. So
Oh yeah. I think
Superman
he's
Lois, I think. Yeah.
yeah. That's definitely an outlier in like the midst of their like material at the moment. I mean, even though that Arrowverse is sort of like slowly dying, with like the Flash, I think, being like one of the last major things
Yeah.
that was still there from like what, 2014 or something,
Hmm.
2013, 2014. God. Anyway, I guess to like wrap this up at the moment, I to again go back to that main question. I do think video game adaptations are getting better. There seems to be more and more like filmmakers who are coming to these projects who clearly have an interest and a passion for this material. And while not everything is a slam dunk, I mean, for every like Castlevania Arcane and like is it Last of Us, you'll have an Uncharted, or you'll have a Mortal Kombat 2021, or you'll have like a What Did the
Hello.
Raccoon Say?
Yeah.
uh, so yeah, I mean, I understand sometimes these people have the best of intentions. Well, not the Halo people. I don't know what the hell those guys are smoking, but um, you can tell that there's at least some passion behind this. It's just the execution and certain decision making where I'm just like,
Mhm.
no,
Yeah.
no, you're not quite there yet. But
Mhm.
there is definitely hype on the horizon. And with some of these films that have like a foundation to jump off of, like the first Sonic movie or the first Mario movie, there's clearly room for improvement to grow and then become even better, or like at least show the world that these adaptations can be done. And with like Nintendo and Sega, especially, they've been sleeping on franchises that they're choosing not to do anything with, in terms of video games. So
Mhm.
adaptations might be another way to drum up interest. Like everyone's been wanting to see like Metro for a while. I think they could do some interesting stuff with the
Of course.
Yakuza games, or like maybe I don't know, Valkyria Chronicles. That would actually be like pretty interesting
Yeah,
if
that's
they could
pretty
make that weird tank thing work. Um
interesting. Yeah. Yeah, I am optimistic. I am not expecting another MCU. I think MCU is one of those like one-offs that you can see one time in history, which
yeah.
pretty much ended in Endgame, but they still want to keep it going. That's on them. Um, yeah, like DC's been trying forever. But like, you get those one-offs. Like the original Star Wars trilogy, that was a one-off. Like as much as like people want to keep it going, personally, like yeah, like we're due for a new item on the list. And if video game adaptations is that, that's great. And if it doesn't fly off, that's great too. It's not the end of the world. They're trying to do it with anime now, and I have my opinions with that. And so yeah, as I said, I am optimistic. It can go either way, whether or not it becomes this massive thing in the future. That's something that we all will find out sooner or later.
Yeah, and I look forward to the journey either way, because like sometimes even when like something's bad, I'm still gonna be like poking my head around the corner, be like, "Yo, what you doing over there?" I'm kind of curious. Let's see what what kind of chaos you're doing. So yeah, with this podcast, like as it going forward, I'll be attempting to talk about like not only maybe just doing like your standard reviews and stuff, but I'm hoping to just do like more topics like this, just general conversations about like the ebbs and flows of video game adaptations, in terms of like maybe doing some news, maybe some pieces on like stuff that's come out before. I want to cover like as much as possible. So we're talking live action, animated, is it stuff on TV and stuff in film as well, because there's such a nice plethora of material now to talk about. And I might just get some additional people in who are like maybe mega fans of certain things, and maybe they can talk about why they're for or against certain adaptations. It could be fun. But this is just the genesis, the starting point, and I think that this episode has gone pretty well. I always have fun talking to Vincent, and I feel like he was able to bring some really fun points to this. I hope I was able to bring some good points to the conversation. I'm not too sure. I'm just a big dummy who likes things, so I don't know.
No, don't sell yourself short, Kurt. Like, you put in a lot of feelings and opinions regarding video game adaptations. But as always, thank you for having me, and I look forward to seeing where this podcast takes us and where video game adaptations takes us in the future.
I feel like there will be joy and pain on the horizon for the both of us, and like I look forward to joining you again to talk about things in a positive or not so positive manner.
All right.
But yeah, before we leave, like Vincent, can you tell people where to find your content, please?
All right. So if you I don't have any video content, but if you are a fan of reading, my articles are between 7 to 10 minutes long. It's at one more game that .ph. It's one more game.ph. I'm a reviewer there. I just finished reviewing Star Wars Jedi Survivor. That's up and running. Spoiler alert, I gave it a good review. I played it on a PS5, so sorry PC gamers. And I mentioned earlier that I did review Dead Island 2 as well this month. I am wrapping up a review on Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster. Watch out for that. Otherwise, if you're more on the literary side, I do have a poem coming out on the polyglotmagazine.com. It's a little experimental. Maybe not everybody's cup of tea. So yeah, there's that on the horizon.
Wonderfully put, sir. And if you want to follow me online, just look for Hypersonic55. I primarily exist on Instagram and DeviantArt as like a illustrator. I do a lot of fan art, but I do have a few original pieces here and there. And if you want to check out my podcast, check out Film Focus. We're primarily on SoundCloud, but it can be found on most of your podcast hosting apps like Spotify, iTunes, and all that other kind of material. But yeah, thank you for listening, ladies and gentlemen. This was really fun. And I'm not going to commit to a schedule at the moment. This podcast will basically just appear when and how I choose to, because whenever I choose to commit to a schedule, everything falls to crap. So but yeah, look forward to more content in the future. I have a good feeling about this. This could be fun. But yeah, until the next time, ladies and gentlemen, have fun gaming and watching your stuff.